The first response coming in from Manish Tewari from the Congress. He's hit out at the External Affairs Minister's statement at the UNSC on Pakistan. He's tweeted out, and I quote, Foreign Minister Jaishankar should perhaps revisit certain chapters of Indian history and diplomacy. He's unfortunately making the same error Defence Minister Krishna Menon, another great diplomat, made. When the threat is China, he is focusing on Pakistan. Let's go over to my colleague Pallavi right now to understand more. Pallavi, I think it would be correct to assume that the statement is being made in reference to the developments we've seen take place in Tawang over the last few days. Now, the defence minister he's referring to, Y.K. Krishna Menon, was of course Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's defence minister up until he was replaced right between the India war with China back in 1962. Is that the correct reference? Is that the context we should be giving our audiences, Pallavi?
Yes, but I think he's also trying to make the oblique reference to the fact that when it comes to China, this government does not want to address the elephant in the room. Remember, one of the biggest criticisms by the Congress party of the Prime Minister and of the government has been that why is it that they don't call out China the way they call out Pakistan? Is it that this government is scared of China? It's something which Congress has been asking repeatedly over the last few days. In fact, the counter which came in and the adjournment notice given by Manish Tewari himself has also been on the fact that the government has never ever come to these intrusions. The Prime Minister has been hobnobbing with them, and we've never ever accepted the fact that China has slowly but steadily tried to enter into Indian territory, and that's the reason why there needs to be a discussion on this inside Parliament.
Okay. All right, Pallavi, thank you for bringing us that. That is how the Congress has responded to these remarks. Now, I'm going to connect once again with my colleague Abhishek. Let me just check. Abhishek, are you still with us? All right.
Yes,
okay, so we're going to go back to focusing on the discussion, the original comments that came in first from Bilawal Bhutto, who is, of course, the Pakistan External Affairs Minister, and then the response that we've seen from S. Jaishankar. I want to understand from you, Abhishek, all of this, the back and forth, comes in the larger context of India sitting on the UNSC over the last 2 years. Can you walk our audiences through the prominence of the United Nations Security Council and what India's tenure over the last 2 years on it has looked like?
So India has got twice the presidency of this esteemed council, where this is the second time that India has been presiding this United Nations Security Council, where 15 members are present, 5 are permanent members, and 10 members they get selected alternatively for 2 years. So India's tenure is going to end here in next 2 weeks, because December 31st will be the last day when India will be having this membership of this United Nations Security Council. They're having multiple occasions where as Jaishankar has also addressed this United Nations Security Council because for representing India, and India has raised the issue of multilateralism, talking about Afghanistan issue, how there should be rebuilding of Afghanistan, issue of Ukraine, issue of food crisis, fertilizer crisis, and in fact, terrorism has been one of the issues that India has raised.
Abhishek, if I could just request you to stay with us. Senior Congress leader Manish Tewari is actually with us on the phone right now. Sir, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning here on CNN News 18. So we were focusing right now on the comments that you made after S. Jaishankar's comments that we've just shared a few minutes ago. Sir, if I could first ask you to elaborate on your comments, then I'll come to you with some questions.
Well, I think the tweet is self-speaking. The fact is that today the challenge is China, and therefore India should use every multilateral institution that is available to underscore and highlight China's perfidy, the manner in which it has been repeatedly transgressing into India's borders. I think that's the fundamental challenge, and so therefore I find that there is diffidence both domestically and internationally when it comes to addressing the China question squarely. So that's the context of the tweet.
Okay. Sir, can I ask you 2 follow-up questions? The first is that we've shared what S. Jaishankar had to say before, and we know that your statement came as a response to that. I want to understand from you, sir, when you're saying that it's possible that the External Affairs Minister is making a similar mistake to the mistake of a defense minister India had back in the 1960s, I just want to understand from you, sir, is it not possible that the External Affairs Ministry, the Defense Ministry, all of these organs are focusing on both countries at the same time? After all, this response was a response to what the Pakistan Foreign Minister had to say, right?
Well, ultimately, what you've seen play itself out in Yangtze, in Tawang, is a vivid illustration of the intensity of the threat that we are facing. At the moment, our borders with Pakistan, fortunately, continue to be tranquil. Even the situation with regard to cross-border terrorism, where Punjab, the state I represent in the Lok Sabha, and Jammu and Kashmir have been on the front line, are relatively stable. What is unstable is the situation with regard to China. And so therefore, when China uses its conventional power in order to try and disrupt the status quo, destabilize India's borders, go against the agreements of 1993, 1996 and 2012, don't you think that India should use every fora available to actually highlight China's perfidy and the manner in which it is trying to change status quo by force? So that's the mistake I'm alluding to. And this was the mistake which was made in the follow-up, in the lead-up to the 1962 border conflict, that while the challenge was China, then Defense Minister Krishna Menon was focused on Pakistan.
Okay. Sir, can I just ask you one last question, then we'll let you go. I want to understand from you, when it comes to China, we're of course talking of a very different kind of enemy. This is a country that sits on the UNSC Permanent Council that we're talking about right now. I want to understand from you, sir, one of the big charges we've heard even from the Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge is that the BJP remains numb on the word China. They don't say the word China. And I want to understand from you, sir, do you think that it's because with China, India needs to play a different, more strategic game? After all, India and Pakistan are historic enemies. But do you think with China, we need to play differently?
Well, how do you say that China is not a historic enemy? After all, China invaded India in 1962, tried to change the status quo by force. So when you quantify historical enemies, and I don't agree with that analogy one bit, because there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies in international politics, much less in real politics. But if you were to use that yardstick of quantification, then China equally falls in that category. And so therefore, for the government not to say anything with regard to China, remain diffident in China, allow India's trade with China to boom and increase exponentially since 2020, while the situation on the border remains taut. These are contradictions which Parliament must discuss. Nobody is trying to point fingers at the government. But if there is a situation with regard to one of your neighbors, and there is a 5:5 differential between China and India currently, the Supreme Legislative Institution must discuss the Sino-Indian relationship in their entirety and in a holistic context. And that is what the government is shying away from.
Okay. All right. Manish Tewari from the Congress, sir, thank you so much for joining us this morning and bringing us your context. Very quick.